reported on the Steele dossier in the past. The Horowitz report came out yesterday or the day before, pretty critical of the dossier, pretty critical of Steele, who apparently heard things from sources, and he said things that were confirmed that weren't confirmed. The P-tape story turns out to have been something that came over, was a conversation over beers made in jest. The FBI didn't tell the courts about any of this. The validation management unit wasn't able to corroborate any of the sort of non-public material in it. Any of that change your mind about the Steele dossier or any of those revelations?
No, Matt, you might have been misunderstanding what I'm saying, and that sounds like a standard way to start, like, oh, no. But no, you can see it in the videos. I'm clear as day. So first of all, I never believed in the P-tape.
So Donald Trump made a huge mistake, as usual, one of many. When he was talking to James Comey, this was before he fired Comey, and Comey's still the FBI director. He told him several times, he brought up the issue of what he called the golden showers thing. 3 different times with James Comey, his FBI director, asked him to look into disproving it, because he said his wife was upset about that news. When he brought it up, he said it couldn't possibly be true. And Comey, it tells in his notes at the time, like, why is the president even talking to me about this? I had no inkling or sense that it could possibly be true. But he keeps insisting, no, it's really, really not true. And he's like, okay. And then he gave unnecessary details, because that's what pathological liars do. And that's what's gotten him in trouble. So here's what he said. According to Comey's notes at the time, again, Comey not fired. He's just taking notes. He just talked to the president. He's the FBI director. There's no reason he has any animus towards Trump at that time. He's just noting what the conversation was. He says Trump had spoken to people who had been on the trip with him, and they had reminded him that he didn't stay overnight in Russia for that. So, let me explain. The so-called P-tape that's in the Steele dossier that got leaked and Trump is obsessed about, and now there's investigations on whether parts of that dossier are true and that Donald Trump actually is beholden to the Russian government and oligarchs, right? In that is the golden showers thing, where Trump goes into a hotel in Russia, the same room that the Obama stayed in, according to the dossier, and he has 2 Russian prostitutes pee on the bed. Now, I never believed that. I told you guys a long time ago, I'm like, that is too outrageous. It's like a weird story. I don't know why anybody would make that up, but it just sounds too ridiculous to be true. Besides, Trump's a germaphobe, and he said that to Comey at the time, too. He's like, I wouldn't do that. I don't like germs. And besides which, it didn't really matter, because for a claim that outrageous, you actually have to have evidence, and it didn't look like they had solid enough evidence. But the way that Trump is denying it was so over the top and so weird. And then he adds this part where he says, oh no, I didn't even stay overnight in Russia on that 2013 trip. That's when the Miss Universe pageant was in Moscow.
From day one, I was like, really? I mean, Trump's a germophobic guy. That would be very surprising, right? But do I think that some parts of the Steele dossier were right? Yeah, we've already seen that some parts were right. And so does that mean all of them? So look, Matt, if you're going to get into, like, hey, what is Trump's connections to the Russians, I'm super happy to do that, and let's do that in a sec, okay? Just to finish the thought on the dossier overall, like, that wasn't like, oh my God, the Steele dossier must be correct. No, to the naked eye, there's a million connections between Trump and Russia, a million, and I'm happy to debate that for a whole nother hour. Okay, so what the Horowitz report, I loved what they said. Okay, so on the one hand, they said all the conspiracies of Donald Trump and his idiot cronies are totally wrong. This was not driven by political bias. That was not the issue at all. In fact, on the Steele dossier, they said it obviously didn't start the investigation, because the investigation had started weeks before they received the Steele dossier at the FBI. But they said, no, that's definitely in the report. You can disagree with the report, but that's in the report. But they criticized the FBI for not being better in getting FISA warrants, for errors in getting and maybe even lying in getting FISA warrants. Well, as a progressive, I love that they would get better on being more thorough in FISA warrants and having those be real instead of the rubber stamp that they are 99.9% of the time. So I don't mind that they caught the FBI making those mistakes. I want them to catch the FBI making those mistakes, and I want the process to be better and for there to be more due process. If you want to get into the connections between Russia and Trump, I mean, we can do this all day long. Eric Trump said, we get all of our money from the Russians.
Guys, try to follow along, okay? It's called logic.
And then when a golf writer asked him why, he said, "Oh, they love golf." And no one in their right mind believes that.
It's a huge difference between Russians buying real estate and having an espionage conspiracy, which was the premise of the Steele dossier and was the premise of the collusion argument.
And I said from day one that I'm less concerned about whether Trump worked with the Russians during the campaign because of things like him saying, "Hey, publicly, why don't you hack into Hillary Clinton's computers or release her emails?" Well, if he was working with them behind the scenes, why would he have to say it publicly? Why did Roger Stone have to go to WikiLeaks to find out what was going on with the documents? If they were working with the Russians, wouldn't they already have the documents? So it wasn't about the campaign. It's that Donald Trump has been a lifelong criminal, and he has had clear financial deals with Russia. And if there's one thing I know about Donald Trump, it's that he'll go bankrupt. And so he borrowed, it looks like, and this is what Deutsche Bank is hiding, borrowed a ton of money from the Russians, guaranteed he lost it, so then he owes the frickin' Russians. And then he becomes president, and Putin goes, "How did I get this lucky?" Right?
Right.
And so you think Putin would use that as leverage against Trump? Absolutely. You think Trump would let him? Absolutely. So the thing I'm more worried about was not the campaign as much as it was what happened once he won the presidency.
Okay. There was a lot of reporting for 2 years that essentially implied that Trump was in an espionage conspiracy, and I mean, is it safe to say now that a lot of that was wrong?
Of course, of course.
No.
No?
So it totally depends on what time period you're talking about. As I just explained, during the campaign, there was a lot of good evidence that he was not yet working with the Russians. He's trying to work with the Russians. They do the meeting in Trump Tower. If they were already working with the Russians, why did they need to do that meeting? And so that meeting is fruitless. But after the election, he gives, in my opinion, now we're going to get into some of the debates, etc. And again, that'll take another hour, but he gives the Russians almost everything they want. He comes out like a little gimp and in front of Putin. He's like, "Oh, yes, I don't believe our government at all. I believe his government," right? And on and on and on. So if you ask me, if I had to lay down a bet, okay, of a lot of money, which I don't have, is Donald Trump a Russian asset right now, or is he not? I would bet he's a Russian asset.
Okay, but that's just based on your impressions of him and how his policies have been since he's been president.
This is hilarious. If you're uneducated, please at least don't make it obvious.
It's based on Donald Trump definitely took money from the Russians. That means very likely he owes the Russians money, the only thing he cares about. Then he does every favor in the world for the Russians when he's president. It doesn't take a genius to put two and two together.